2022 Arctic Cat launch. For anybody that's just kind of stumbling upon this video, I do own a 2020 Arctic Cat Riot. Just not riding it today. So I kind of had basically heard about the entire launch before it happened, about 2 weeks out. And then Arctic Cat dumped all their YouTube videos a day early, so I saw them all there too. And then took them down. So a light launch this year. A lot of the models are now running Atac, which is the on-the-fly adjustable suspension, so that's pretty cool. Arctic Cat has a new version of their self-adjusting clutch called Adapt. That's, I think before, and I could be wrong on this, they had a self-adjusting team setup. Now they have their own version of that. If you guys watch Sixes, he says that's kind of a telltale that they're entering the end of a model run, so the end of the Procross, but they're possibly still 2 years out, which is a bummer. So 2022, obviously Procross, and he's saying 2023 is going to be Procross. So if that's the case, I just got to be honest, that's a bummer. I'm rooting for Cat, guys. I've ridden cats my whole life. We've had as many cats as any sled. I'm trying to think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cats in this time I've ridden. So I want to see them succeed. I really think if they had some sort of new chassis this year, or even a total rework on the body, they could have owned the trail market, but obviously that hasn't happened. I've seen a lot of guys say the Procross chassis is good and doesn't need to be replaced. I can pretty much agree with that. It's a good chassis. It just needs to be narrowed up. I mean, the thing's been built to hold a 4-stroke turbo engine in it, as well as 2 strokes, and it's just a little big in the hips, you know. Narrow it up, make it a little lighter. You could use a similar structure overall, you know, just tweak it, you know, do what Polaris did with the Axis, you know, change a few things and really bring it into today, you know. The Thundercat now has power steering, so a pretty cool little addition for the guys that want that sled. Big sled to wrestle around, power steering is always a good thing. And then in the mountains, there's now a 146, I think it's a hardcore, that's what they're calling it. So a little bit more mountain-oriented off-trail sled. Didn't cost so much to build, you know, you already have the 146 Alpha Rail in the Blast and in the Riot X. So throw it in a hardcore, make it a little lighter, you know, offer another option. I think the colors look pretty good this season. Obviously that's a subjective thing, but they've been kind of, last year they went a little bit more muted, I think. A lot of grays with like reds and greens mixed in. And then this season, really bright colors, so, you know, entice buyers a little bit, if that's what you're into. There's also a new Blast model. I think it's called the Blast XR, if I remember correctly. It's a 146 dual rail skid Blast. A lot of Blast options. You can really kind of get whatever you want in that sled, so that's a cool thing. They're definitely running with that. Good for them. They brought it to market last year. I hope it's doing well. I haven't really seen a ton of them. Might just be in my area, you know. They're just not really hitting yet, but they seem to be doubling down on making them, so that's a good thing.
All right, so for 2022, everybody knew that Yamaha was going to be bringing the electronic power steering. So that made its way to 2 models, the Sidewinder LTX GT and the Sidewinder STX GT. The way that works is at slow speeds, it's going to apply the most assistance, whereas at high speeds, it applies basically none. And then in the bumps, it's going to smooth out the bump steer. On the Procross, and especially with a heavier 4-stroke engine in the front, you're going to get a little bit of that. So I think it's definitely going to be an advantage for kind of the more laid-back rider. These seem like 2 good models to put it in. As far as Yamaha goes, the 2 new models they have for this season are going to be the Transporter Light 2-Up, so that's going to be a variation on the Venom/Blast. Give a 2-Up affordable option that, you know, has enough power to kind of get people around, but is nothing too crazy. You're not dealing with like a turbocharged 4-stroke engine. Seems like a decent little option, and I'm sure people will enjoy it. Next is the Mountain Max LE 154 SL. So the SL on the end stands for super light. What they did with that sled, it still comes with a 3-inch track, still has the alpha beam, all that stuff, but last year Yamaha made electric start standard on all their mountain sleds, kind of an interesting choice on their part. For 2022, you can now buy this sled that doesn't come with it. You get a pull start, no electric start, so you get the lightweight seat, now that the battery's not in the back, and a smaller gas tank to kind of add to that whole super light name, keep the sled as light as possible. The colors seem very Yamaha. A little sad to see that, blue SRX go away, but they have a pretty cool red and white combo with some gold lettering, some silvers, things like that. So very fitting for Yamaha, but I did love that blue SRX, but you can't do that every year. It would get a little boring. So now with the spring power surge from Yamaha, you get a 3-year warranty on your sled. So now, if we kind of compare that to what Arctic Cat offers, in Snowmageddon you get the base 1-year warranty, plus with Snowmageddon you get an additional 1-year warranty on top of that. Definitely a bit of added value, but then when you go to look at the actual prices, so the Sidewinder STX is $18,099. So with that sled you still get on-the-fly adjustable suspension, so soft, medium, hard. Definitely a very good shock package. But when you compare that to the Arctic Cat Thundercat, like I said before, you get the 2-year warranty. If you get that sled without the electronic power steering, you still get the on-the-fly suspension adjustment, so soft, medium, hard again. And that sled comes in at $15,695. Then if you get the electronic power steering, the sled's going to cost you $16,595. So the only sled that Yamaha offers that's kind of similar in price to that, as far as like a Sidewinder would go, something to compete with the Thundercat, would be the Sidewinder LTX SE. That comes in at $15,999, but you don't get piggyback shocks, you don't get the on-the-fly adjustment. So still some added value with the Thundercats in my opinion. And just kind of interesting to see how they stack up against one another. Now kind of on the other end of the spectrum, if you were to look at the Mountain Max LE 154, that comes in at $13,699. The one thing I will say on Yamaha's website, they say the 3-year warranty only applies to their 4-stroke offerings, so I don't know what that means for the Mountain Max, if it's going to be a 2-year warranty or a 1-year warranty. Now if we compare that to the M8000 Mountain Cat with Atac, that's going to come in at $14,925. Again, that's a 154 with a 3-inch paddle. So the Mountain Cat's going to come with an air shock in comparison to the Mountain Max having a coilover QS3. And then on top of that, like I said, you get the Atac on the Mountain Cat. It's going to be $1,300 more. Another interesting sled to kind of compare it to would be the M8000 Hardcore Alpha. So a 154 with a 3-inch power claw on that sled with the QS3 shocks, so it does not have Atac. That sled comes in at $14,325, so only about a $600 difference. And then that sled is going to have coilovers rather than the air shocks like the Mountain Cat, so that does bring it a little bit more in line with the Mountain Max. So kind of just depends on what you value, but cool to see that, in the 4-stroke market, the Yamahas are kind of coming in a little bit more expensive. They did the R&D on the motor, XYZ. But then in the 2-stroke market, there's a little bit of a value to be had with the Mountain Max. So interesting to just kind of see how the two brands weigh out, especially since they share a chassis and all that. And that's something I've seen kind of covered in a lot of different areas. So what would I like to see come from Cat and Yamaha? Definitely some sort of collaboration along the lines of what Skidoo is kind of doing with Lynx. I understand that they'll probably share chassis going forward, but it would be cool to kind of see suspension variations, ergonomic variations, things like that. With Lynx, there's that PPS skid that's kind of a little bit more playful, a little bit more meant for big bumps. And then you look at Skidoo, they have the R Motion X, kind of meant to keep the skis down and carve really, groom trails and that type of thing. I'd love to see that from Cat/Yamaha. Put a very exciting mogul jumping kind of skid in the Arctic Cats, and then you can put like a shredder type on-trail skid in the Yamahas, because that's kind of what they've always been meant to do. Even in the mountains, it would be cool. Obviously, Arctic Cat's very invested in the single rail skid. Put the dual rail in the Yamahas and give guys that option, They already are aware they're going to be getting the same sled, but there are some guys that will always prefer a dual rail over a single. And you could have both, Skidoo even kind of does that with their Lynx and Skidoo mountain sleds. You have the T-motion on the Skidoos, and then you have a traditional dual rail skid that doesn't have any sort of flex to it other than the flex edge track on the Boondockers. So that's what I'd really like to see going forward. As far as the chassis themselves, that's going to be up to Cat and Yamaha. Obviously, they have to work the 4-strokes in, so that's a big part of the design, but I'd almost like to see, again, what Skidoo did with having a 2-stroke chassis first, and then they widen it up for the 4-strokes. I know there are the die-hard 4-stroke guys out there, but I don't think designing a chassis to fit a 4-stroke and then slapping a 2-stroke in it is necessarily the right course of action. It's kind of led to a chassis that, like I said, in 2012, an amazing chassis. For a long time, a really great chassis, but when you look at the super skinny Matrix and you look at the skinny G4 and then you look at the Pro Cross, it's definitely the biggest sled out there. It's the heaviest sled of all of them. So it's just kind of time to trim the fat, make it a little bit more sculpted, give the rider more room to move around. And if that has to come, via a little bit more 2-stroke centric design that then can be widened for a 4-stroke, I'm kind of all about that. The last little bit, I've kind of always looked at Arctic Cat kind of like the Dodge of the snowmobile world. They had a 1000cc engine. They were the first ones to have a 4-stroke turbo. I would love to see them get back to that. The F7, a hot rod that always over-delivered. If they have some 900 coming, or if they're the first ones to bring the 2-stroke turbo to a trail sled, that would make a huge name for Arctic Cat. That would bring back a ton of buyers and just make a huge statement in the industry. So that would be another thing I think would be great for them. Like I said, I enjoy the Pro Cross. The price point is almost impossible to beat. Awesome price point. 2-year warranty this year with Snowmageddon. A decent little package overall. But, every manufacturer moves forward as time goes on, and those are just kind of some things I'd like to see come from Cat and Yamaha. They're both awesome brands. I want to see all 5 manufacturers now stay in North America, push the sport. I think things like Adapt, Arctic Cat's front suspension, things they've done with rear suspensions, the Alpha Rail, all show how much innovation Arctic Cat's capable of, and I don't want them to go anywhere in the sport. I want to keep them around and bring in awesome stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you're excited for any of these models or you're ordering any. I keep trying to push Dad to get a Thundercat. We'll see how that goes. But until the next video, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you then.